I can't imagine being from here, growing up here, spending my whole life here, and being a fan of a team 2,500 miles away and not being able to share that energy in that moment with the people that I see every single day.
I broke up with my ex-girl. Here's a number.
What's that shit say?
Psych! That's the wrong number!
Well, thank you so much, everyone, for tuning in. This is another episode of the Scoped Exposure podcast. We go from the CANADA to the PA to the D. There's a lot of letters there, but I'm really excited to be welcoming Matt from GRIDIRON onto the podcast. Thank you so much for coming on, man.
Yeah, man. Thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
Absolutely. So for those that have been living under a rock, GRIDIRON just put out its debut LP off Triple B Records, No Good at Goodbyes. I think it's very early in the year, but I think it's fair to say, at least for me, that this is within my top 10 records for 2022. Been on constant repeat, and friend of the show, Molly, who's come on a number of times. We had him on a second time for season 2 of the podcast, right when I think it was right after you guys did the Despise split. And so we were talking about the band and the formation, but this feels the right time to hit up another member of the band. And I feel like the lyrical side of GRIDIRON is super foundational and relevant. So I'm really excited to be chatting with you and again, appreciate your time.
Awesome. Yeah, thanks. No problem.
So, Matt, before we get into the music chats, it's a tradition here on the podcast to check some beverages to kind of like break the ice, get a couple liquids flowing. So tell me what you're going to be bringing for the show as far as beverages are concerned.
Well, there's only one beverage that exists, and that beverage is Diet Coke.
Okay.
Yeah, we Diet Coke running through the veins at all time. I even waited to open it. I'm going to crack it right now.
Please do. Why have you just been Diet Coke since day one, or what's the lore there?
It's the superior soda. I used to be a really big Mountain Dew guy.
Okay.
But after reading the nutritional facts and stuff, I realized it's probably not great to be a big Mountain Dew guy. So I made the switch to a healthier alternative, Diet Coke. So.
And do you treat yourself at all and do like regular Coke or Coke Zero at all, or is it always always diet? It's
Diet Coke Army through and through. Okay. Yeah, I never switch sides with it. Yeah.
So, okay, now I'm just very fascinated because it's such a simple beverage, but you seem to have a lot of passion behind it. So when you're in that situation where you're at a restaurant and they're like, oh, we only have Pepsi products, like, are you turning the tables over, or like, how are you navigating those situations?
See, so sometimes I'll go back and dance with the devil and have myself a Mountain Dew.
Okay.
But that's always dangerous. So I can't do Diet Pepsi. I don't like Diet Pepsi. So I'll usually just opt for water. And if they don't, if I don't go with the Mountain Dew, I'll keep it extra healthy on that meal.
Yeah. So loyalty for the Diet Coke seems very prevalent to you.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. No, that's a great pick. I respect. It's always funny because sometimes I just assume everyone knows what a bev check is, and then they're like, "What do you mean by that?" I'm like, "Oh, just like bring a beverage to the show." But I have mad respect for people that are like, they know what they're bringing, they know why they're bringing it versus like it was just in my fridge.
Right.
What I'm doing bev wise is Matt, you're probably unaware, but we have a couple of beverage sponsors for our podcast, actually. So there's a brewery here in town called New Level, and I picked up my monthly flat from them, and I haven't tried this yet. So this is their Guava Lord. So it's kind of like a pale ale style, but it's got guava in it. So I'm going to try and see how that works. We were talking at the top of the show of some cool flavor or scent combinations. So I'm kind of curious on what this, not a little bit fancier than your Diet Coke, but not too off the beaten path, I hope.
Yeah, I mean, guava. I'm not a big IPA guy. I'm a light beer or like a lager man. But
Got you.
I do, that looks like a nice, refreshing summertime sipper right there.
Yeah. Well, especially living in Canada, we're like just getting out of the the snow kind of times, thankfully. But other than that, cheers to you, Matt. Really excited to be doing this podcast with you, bro.
Excited.
Is it a requirement for everyone in Gridiron to be Team Diet Coke, or is that like are you on an island?
I think kind of by default, everyone is Team Diet Coke, and maybe that's why the chemistry is so good that we're all on the same page with the Diet Coke.
Mm-hmm.
Mully is mainly a water guy, but Bill, Jake, and myself, and I believe Xavier is a Diet Coke head too. So yeah, we're all for the most part pretty much on the same page with the DC.
I feel like most bands need to be on the same page with anything beverage wise. I know my band, we're big Red Bull people, and we have a tradition for every show that someone buys a 4-pack, and then like that person also has to give like a little pep talk before our set. But it kind of circles of like, oh, you got classic, or oh, you got tropical this time around. So I think all the people in the different bands listening need to have that talk with their band of like, what kind of beverage band are we?
Yeah, absolutely.
So Matt, for first timers, on our podcast, I always like to get a little bit of context about how they got into heavy music. Obviously, we're going to be talking about the new record, and I guess your role in it and how it all came to be. But let's get just some context about you, about how you got on the beaten path of breakdowns and two-step riffs and all that kind of stuff. However you want to explain it, take us way back in time, and you can do the super long version or the elevator pitch, whatever length you want to set.
Sure. Yeah. So I grew up having 2 older brothers, and they were always like really into hip hop. And so growing up as like a young kid, and my brothers are like 4 and 6 years older than me. So when I was in elementary school, they were like old enough to get like rap records and stuff like that. So they'd always give me the CDs. And this was like, I'd either burn a CD or I'd like find a radio station and get a blank cassette tape and put it in my cassette player and like hit record when it was playing, when like a song I liked was playing on the radio or whatever, and would record it, and I'd make like my own mixtapes. So like I grew up listening to hip hop primarily. And then in high school, I ended up being friends with a couple of the guys from Agitator, and they were into heavy music at the time. And I didn't really know too much about it at the time. I was just like kind of a rap guy. And, the more I became friends with them, I'd hear them talking about shows and stuff like that. And at first I wouldn't go with them because I was like, I don't, screaming stuff's not for me, or whatever. And then Marty from Agitator actually had a show in his barn at his parents' house. And I was like, you know what, everyone else is going, so I'm going to go. So I went, and it ended up being awesome. You know what I mean? And that was my first experience, was in a barn in the middle of like rural Pennsylvania. So that's kind of what, turned me into hardcore. And then ever since then, it's been, going to as much as I can, participating as much as I can, stuff like that. But yeah, they were, so basically meeting up with them in high school and them kind of putting me on to hardcore and stuff is how I got involved with it initially.
Yeah. And it's always important for me to hear that, because everyone's got similarities, but like I feel like there have been a lot of people that have come on that have said like, yeah, I was listening to heavy music, but I was also listening to things like rap and hip hop. But it sounded like you were actually like fully in that world, and then it was only within just being in the circle of friends where you're like, well, my friends are doing this, I might as well check it out. And then once having that in-person reaction to it, you're like, okay, now I get it.
Right. And then I was able to like, kind of discover bands, like E-Town, for existence. It's like, wow, like, the two things can coexist into one, and it's incredible. It's the two things that I love the most formed into one thing, so that's stuff like that is what really sold me on hardcore. It's like E-Town and Downset and stuff like that.
Yeah. I always found when I was getting more into it that I was like, I only found out like I made connections of like, oh, it does make sense, the similarities between hardcore and like the hip hop world, especially with a lot of like the features that is just like so commonplace. But was that just like so apparent the minute that you like started to dig yourself? Like, oh, like there's similarities here that maybe other people aren't seeing, and they think it's only a hardcore thing or only a hip hop thing.
And especially with like underground hip hop, because hardcore obviously is like an underground niche thing.
Yeah.
And, hip hop to a point, once you get outside of what you hear on the radio and stuff like that, is exactly the same thing. And so those two, subcultures tend to intersect way more than I thought they did, prior to understanding both of them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So, who were some of like the initial like big hip hop and rap artists that you were listening to just kind of prior to getting into hardcore that like really were foundational for you going into that extra subgenre?
So I love like the first CD I ever bought. I went to like a CD store at the mall and bought The Lox, Money, Power, Respect. And the only reason I bought it is because my mom let me go in by myself, and I was too young to buy CDs with the parental advisory sticker, or printed on but this one had a sticker. So I walked in the back of the store and peeled the parental advisory sticker off and went up and bought the CD. I had no idea who it was. You know what I mean? So I bought this, and then I put it in my CD player, and this is the coolest thing ever, which is, like Jadakiss and stuff like that. So I, really, really like the, early to mid 90s New York stuff like Big L and The Lox and D Block. My brother would let me borrow his DMX Flesh of My Flesh CD. So that was like a huge one for me. And then, DMX is a great example. Like, you feel the aggression in his lyrics and his delivery and stuff like that. And, obviously when it comes to hardcore, you feel that a lot too, coming out of bands.
Totally. So, you're saying the parental advisory sticker, was that like an actual like, oh, no one over the age of 14 or 15 can buy this? Because I would imagine that like if you peel off the sticker, they scan it into the system, and then it would probably come up as something like that. But maybe that technology didn't exist when you were doing that.
Back in the day, yeah. But yeah, they because most of them were printed on the cover. Right. This one was just a sticker on the cover, so I could peel that sticker off the front, and I ended up getting it. So that
is so sick. Just like going into the back and just ripping it off and being like, hey, I found this when I saw it, man. Sorry.
Yeah, it's like the most random first CD to ever get, but it probably, absolutely shaped me and like molded me into what kind of music I would grow up listening to.
Right. Yeah. It like my background kind of before music was definitely more in like, playing video games and doing a lot of that. So there was like a lot of formative games that I had to go around to eventually get because it had like that M-rated label. Right. And coming from like a Christian background, it's like my parents were like, there's no way that you're going to get this. I was like, well, I'm going to get my friend at school to go and buy it and then do that. And but very funny that just I'm seeing just little Matt in the corner just ripping it off and being like, I got this. And not like you're like, this is the record for me. You're just like, I want something to chew on.
Right. And I saw that, obviously you always want what you can't have, and I saw an opportunity and I jumped on it, totally. And it ended up being maybe a life changer as far as music goes. So,
So fast forwarding, kind of getting back up to speed. So you go to that barn show with your friends in Agitator. What was kind of like, were you like trying to figure out how to play in your own band right away, or you're like, I still need to kind of like learn the ropes and kind of like do my own digging before I'm doing that? I'm just kind of curious on the track record for you and how fast that started.
So after that show, it made me want more, you know what I mean? It made me want to see more and stuff like that. And I believe one of the next shows, like when I first started going around the shows, it was like the era where like Cold World was playing here every single weekend. Mongoloids were playing here every single weekend. Mother Mercy, Letdown, you know, both those bands were playing every single weekend. So I think one of my next shows was, you know, I think it might have been, it was like the Have Heart Blacklisted Ceremony Letdown tour in New Jersey. And that show was obviously insane. And then that was like the show that was like, okay, I'm all in on this.
Yeah. Yeah. There's definitely like, I think everyone has a big, like monumental show that kind of like galvanizes or cements like, this is the shit I want to do forever. Or at least like for a long, long, long time. And usually it's like a bigger tour package, a band's last show, a reunion show, like something that actually like is very like it has a huge community aspect as far as a lot of people showing up, but it's just like the energy in the room is just infectious.
Right.
So so you do that show, you start to do that. Like, have you always been a lyricist and doing vocals, or were you picking up guitar, drums, bass? Tell me about that.
I can't play any instruments, but I've always been like, you know, before hardcore, I always would like write like rap lyrics and stuff just in a notebook. And like, I have a few songs recorded. I never put them out, but it was just always something that I kind of just did to do. But yeah, as far as instruments go, I can't play any instruments. I played bass for like 3 shows with Mully's old band, probably in like 2011 or something like that. And I sucked. I was literally the worst. And there was like one song that started out with like just the bass, and I would fuck it up every single time and like look back and look at like the pure disgust on Tyler's face. So that's what made me realize, like, you know what, you know, guitar's not for me.
Yeah.
So then we sold the bass equipment and the jerseys and the rafters now. So
that's fair. So I think something that's interesting too is that like, I think there was a time where it was like, yeah, there's like bands like E-Town that are like known for that style of the more rap influenced lyrics, but that style of vocals, at least from the world that I came in, like some people would almost like clown on it to a degree of like, oh, you're like rapping on this like heavy metal track, like what's going, are you trying to be E-Town? It's like it was only, it seems that like at the time, and this is going back like maybe 10 or 15 years ago, but like at the time it was like, oh, like there's only bands that are allowed to do that, but that just can't be a common thing within hardcore. It needs to be the gnarliest screams or like rhythmic style of vocals wasn't as embraced as it is today. So as that was your background and quote unquote your bread and butter, like how did you navigate that? Did you push against that, or did you just like, maybe I'll just do this and just like sprinkle it in slightly?
It was one of those things like when Gridiron first started, my first text to Will was write some music that I can rap on. You know, so it's one of those, like there's bands like E-Town, but then there's also bands like Crutch who has a very like hip hop-esque delivery to them, but they're not like, when you listen to them, you would never be like, oh, he's rapping.
Right.
You know what I mean? So there's a very fine line, I think, when it comes to that style of vocals and that style of music to, you know, you can fall on one side or you can fall on the other very easily. And you know, that's obviously something that I've kept in mind, you know, while doing this band.
Yeah. So yeah, let's just talk about the very origin. Cause like Gridiron, like I think when, I can't remember, it was on the band socials, on yours or maybe someone else's, but I saw the screenshot of the text message being like, yo, I have like, it's burning in me to do some kind of E-Town kind of band. So was that an initial idea when like things were really slowing down pandemic wise, or has this been like an idea of yours like for years and years and years, and it only has manifested within the last few?
It was always something that I wanted to do. Like, it was always an idea that I had, like, oh, it would be really cool to do a band that sounds like this. And Will and I, during the middle of the pandemic, would play Call of Duty together for sometimes like 12 plus hours in a day. And it was just like, that's all we did. Like, that's all you could do. You know what I mean? It's like, it was the only way that you could feel like you were like hanging with the boys is, you know, if you were playing video games together. So it got to a point where I felt like I was kind of getting a little bit burnt out on playing video games all the time. So I just asked him, I was like, yo, let's just write a couple songs and, you know, we'll just do something for fun. We don't even have to put it out. You know, I just want something else to do. And he was on board. So he wrote the songs and then sent them over to me. And then I wrote lyrics to him and then sent them back to him. And then we kind of had like a revelation that we're like, this could be pretty cool if we actually record it.
Right.
You know, so then we ended up, you know, wanting to record it. So then I asked Mully and Jake if, and actually Mike from Neverending Game was going to be the other guitarist.
Oh, okay.
Initially, but he lives in California. So like it came to the point where we discussed, like, if we ever did play shows, like logistically, it would just be really tough, you know, having an extra person across the country, you know, to have to fly in or whatever. So, yeah, we recorded it in Philly and then Will recorded the guitars in Michigan and sent them over to us in Philly. And then it kind of got all put together that way.
Yeah.
And then later, once we, you know, started getting shows and playing and stuff like that, then we asked our boy Xavier if he wanted to join up too.
So just like breaking down the expectation, because it was like, we're just playing Call of Duty. It's like getting a little old because we're like, you know, 3, 4, 5, 6 months in at that point, and you know, team deathmatch or whatever. I'm more of a Halo person, so I don't know all like the current matches and types for Call of Duty. But like doing that after a while, it's like, okay, we have to do this. But I like how you said like it was more just like to do something, not to like, let's do this new band that has all this new level of responsibility. Like the expectation was literally at the bottom of the barrel. And then it was like, so when you said there was a revelation of like, this could actually be something, like, what was that? Was it like a specific song or a mix that came back and you're like, oh, like we could have something here? Like,
so like when everything was recorded, we listened to it and we were like, it's something that is fresh. Like it's something that doesn't really sound like anything that's happening right now.
Right.
And I think all in all the songs just turned out cooler than we had expected, maybe, or, you know, it was just, you know, we never thought we were going to play a show. We never thought we were going to, you know, even put out a tape, you know, and now, you know, we just put out the LP and stuff. So it all happened very fast, but it also happened very like stress-free, which was awesome.
Yeah.
You know, that's like one thing that like Gridiron really prides itself on. It's just like all vibes, no stress, you know, it's supposed to be, being in a band is supposed to be fun.
Totally.
So it's like one of those things that like, you know, always make sure that like it never gets to the point where it's not fun, because if it gets to the point where it's not fun, then what's the point? You know?
Yeah, there is a very strange balance, and it's different for everyone, of like hard work and being able to prove yourself. Like it's the same thing with this podcast. Like we're on almost at 200 episodes, and there's definitely been a lot of episodes that I've done that are like really, really fun, and I'm enjoying that. But sometimes it's like I need to have an episode, and I'm doing a favor for this person, and those kind of things. But I feel like it needs to be, you know, if you're splitting the efforts, it should be 51% having fun and 49%, you know, having to buckle down and get to work on different things for sure. Versus having it like, I'm really only having 20% of fun being in this band and it's 80% work.
Right. Now it's a little more, you know, obviously at this point it's more serious than it was, you know, a year ago. But, you know, ultimately the values and the goal is still exactly the same, you know.
And I kind of feel that in the same vein. It's like my band was like, oh yeah, we're just going to play some local stuff. And then it's like, oh shit, like we're getting to play Hold Your Ground Fest with you guys in September, which is dope. And just a plethora of other cool things that have hit our plate. So like, how do you like? It sounds like you said the mission is still the same, to have it be low stress, to have it be maxed out vibes. But like, what are the actual like practical things you do to like to keep that mission high in the sky?
We all have a part in everything. Like, I go to Will for a lot of stuff because, with Never Ending Game and stuff like that, like Will has dealt with certain things before that maybe I haven't dealt with.
Sure.
As far as art stuff goes, like Mully is the GOAT. So, he has that covered, so we all kind of have our own responsibilities and stuff like that. And, everything just kind of works, and it works effortlessly, which is, a really nice bonus.
Mm-hmm. So, all the actual responsibilities don't fall on one person, and then everyone else just gets to run wild.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
I never really asked bands like, what, like, naming your band, like what went into that. But I think the one thing that anytime I've talked about Gridiron, people are like, that's just football. So was that intentional when you guys were naming the band, or was that more of like that's another term for that? Because it's always funny, Googling you guys is like, oh, Gridiron band. Oh, like I have to band camp and go like a little bit more specific versus just coming up with the band name itself.
Yeah, I mean, when Will and I discussed band names, we both like football probably too much. So we were like, well, this like is related to football and it sounds pretty cool. So yeah, we'll just use that. So that's pretty much, there wasn't much thought that went into it, but that was the thought that went into it.
Mm-hmm. No, it is cool because I like it. I like how hardcore bands can just kind of prioritize like what actually sounds dope. And then if there is a connection to something outside of that, then that's just kind of the way it goes.
Right.
I know, I've watched a lot of your guys' sets that have gone online and just seen different stuff. And you seem to like rock a lot of different teams when it comes to football. Yeah,
I mean, I'm just like a jersey guy. Like I love jerseys. Now there's obviously specific teams that'll never touch my body. Okay. Like the Dallas Cowboys will never wear a Cowboys jersey. We'll never wear, I'm a diehard Eagles fan. I'm Philadelphia sports
for sure.
Unfortunately to a fault. Mm-hmm. But yeah, I just like, there's a lot of specific players and stuff like that I like that I'll wear their jersey as long as they're on a team that I don't consider an enemy of mine. So
you guys have never played Texas yet?
No.
Okay.
I got some things to say when we do.
Okay. It's always that, like, I feel like when bands will hit a certain city, that a person who's got a sports background will either say like, fuck this team, or like, the band will like wear the local shirt or whatever. But I feel like it's always hit or miss of like, it actually does good or bad for the set at times. I don't know if you have any thoughts on that, or you're like, no, I'm going to take any opportunity I can to.
No, there's, I mean, even Cowboys. when E-Town played This Is Hardcore, they took a shot at the Eagles because, he's Giants fan and stuff like that. So it's, it's all in good fun. Like if a Cowboys fan was in a band that I liked and, he was here talking shit, like that's what you're supposed to do. You know what I mean? I wouldn't go outside if I liked the band,
Mm-hmm. This is a sports related question, but I am curious on your take. There's someone I look up to that had a take where it's like, if you don't cheer for your home team, then you don't appreciate the process of like the grind and the build up versus just like jumping on like whatever hype team is there. Have you always just been an Eagles fan, or do you have any thoughts around that when it comes to like cheering for your home team and the climb that is like, if you're like a New York Jets fan, the team sucks, but the actual like climb as they grow, like I'm just kind of curious on your thoughts on that.
I could not agree more with them. I think you should support and represent the sports teams where you're born and raised. And I don't think there's any excuse, in my opinion, to like any other team. Now, I'm sure they're outliers that actually make sense to most people, but they just don't make sense to me. Like, Eagles, for instance, they've went over 50 years without winning a Super Bowl. And it's like every year, everyone around here just has their hopes build up, build up, build up. And they just get shot down year after year after year. And it's just like misery, constant misery. And then you have the Eagles Super Bowl year. And it's something that like you can't put into words like how it felt around the city when they won the Super Bowl. Like there's nothing that will ever top like everyone was everyone's best friend on that day. Like,
right.
Everyone, everyone holding doors for each other, high-fiving, like people crying. I mean, it was truly insane. And it's like, I can't imagine being from here, growing up here, spending my whole life here, and being a fan of a team 2,500 miles away and not being able to share that energy in that moment with the people that I see every single day.
Right.
If that makes sense.
Yeah, totally. And I think you can clearly tell when someone has like flipped and flopped versus like, no, I've actually cheered for this team for 20 years or 50 years
right.
or whatever it is.
It makes all the pain worth it the day the pain stops, pretty much,
And I haven't thought about it this way, but it's kind of the same, like, like it's obvious that you ride for your own scene in the hardcore space. But yeah, like there are some people that will like, it's totally fine to have friends in other scenes and be like, yeah, I really want to support this neighboring scene or things like that. But to have that as your like primary versus where you're actually based is a little weird at times for sure.
Right. Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, and we are, as far as hardcore goes in Philly, we are so spoiled, with everything that like Joe and Bob does for the scene and stuff. It's like, why would you want to go anywhere else for shows? Anything you would ever want to see is coming here. Yeah. You know what I mean? So, we are very fortunate in that sense. And, we're fortunate in the sense that we have New York City an hour and a half north, and we have Baltimore an hour and a half south. And, DC's right there. Boston's right there. So, we're kind of in the sweet spot where we're not missing anything around here.
Yeah. So because you brought up Philly, this wasn't on my to talk about list, but I think it just kind of is coming top of mind now. So your guys' first show was that Philly barbecue. And I had like heard through friends of friends, whether it was either Molly or I know Davin from March for Life when she was living back there before she moved to New York, was just saying it was just like an absolute shit show at some moments. I don't know if you have any personal anecdotes of like how that went, because I felt for you guys because it was like your first show ever, and then it's like at this very killer like stacked lineup, but then just the logistics of the show, like things were falling apart. So for the uninitiated, can you kind of like share and allude to some of those things from your eyes?
Obviously the venue was incredible. It was like old school, rural PA, VFW, the fluorescent lights, tile floor vibe, good stage. So like the venue was awesome. I don't think the woman who ran the venue really knew what she was getting herself into prior to okaying the show.
Sure.
And throughout the whole entire show, it was kind of Bob just trying to like do damage control with her, like trying to, because there were multiple times where that show was not going to finish, and then they finally came to an agreement that the show would go on, but no one else would be allowed in, which was kind of, obviously a bummer, because people were traveling and stuff like that to go to this show.
Yeah, this was one of the first Philly shows back at all, I think.
I think it was the first Philly show back. Yeah. So if there might have been one beforehand, but yeah, it was the first big one back. So all in all, like with how crazy that woman was acting and, screaming and freaking out and stuff like that, like for Bob to be able to like talk her down and keep the show going. And it ended up, I mean, all things considered, that show was incredible, So it ended up, it could have been a lot worse than it was. And, given the circumstances, it ended up still being a lot of fun.
Yeah, I know. I know Joe Hardcore is definitely a guest that I eventually want to get here on the show. But like, I feel for like people like that have such an insane level of responsibility. Like, I think any promoter is in kind of that space where it's like, man, I really hope that you are getting some enjoyment out of the show because,
Right.
and I'm sure that they're putting their enjoyment at very last compared to like the bands, the people that are doing sound and videos and photos, the people attending, the venue owners, and then, you know, Joe and Bob at the very
Right.
bottom of
Yeah, it's one of
bottom
those
the
things
list.
that like I feel like it gets overlooked a lot, like how much actually goes into booking the show. And that's why it's like, you know, Joe and Bob, they work their asses off, you know, to keep Philly being as awesome as it is. And, you know, it's very easy to kind of just overlook the logistics and the stress and, you know, things of that nature that they have to deal with on a regular basis to make these shows happen. So the fact that, you know, both of them just do it, you know, basically at this point, there's multiple shows every single weekend. Just it's nonstop. So yeah, they are. They're on one.
Yeah.
Know? So it's awesome.
Yeah. So let's talk about the new record. So No Good at Goodbye is like, as far as the time we're recording this, out for like a week, 2 weeks. Has been popping up everywhere. I've multiple re-listens, especially for myself. So like, you know, I want to talk about like specific tracks for itself, and I really like how you guys like, instead of like dumping an entire promo or an entire split back onto it, it was more like one from the EP and one from the split. I really like that, and then doing a little bit of remixing and, you know, still keeping it fresh. So talk to me about like, you know, doing an initial EP and then a split and then right into the LP. Like, what was the most like the biggest grind from your I guess responsibility with that record?
So I'd be lying if I said it was a grind. So originally when we recorded the EP, Alex from Streets of Hate put the tape out, and then Sam from Triple B was like, let me put it on a record. And we were like, he said, I'll put it on a record. He was like, just do an LP afterwards. And we're like, all right, whatever, you know? So, you know, we did the EP that came out, and then we ended up, Despise hit us up to do a split, and that came out on From Within Records. And I love everything that Carter does with From Within. So, yeah, you know, the fact that we could do a record with him was really cool. And so we did the split, and then the first time Tyler and Will ever played together, Will flew out here just for a weekend to like practice and maybe get some writing done. And it was actually Xavier's first practice with us as well. And we all went to Xavier's house in Delaware, and Will and Tyler went into the basement and they wrote the whole LP in like 5 hours or something like that. So it's like watching those two, like they're both just so like musically gifted. You would have thought that they've played instruments together every day for like 20 years straight. Like and especially with me, because I don't know how to play instruments, I'm just like looking at them, like look at each other different, and they both knew exactly what they were like trying to get from the other person.
Right.
There was
some telepathic like writing happening. You're like,
it was truly insane. Yeah, it was nuts. So then, you know, we got the LP done in a day pretty much. And then obviously we made like changes here and there, you know, leading up the recording, but the whole like foundation of it got finished in a day. And then we booked recording, and that was it. As far as me, like lyric writing and stuff, I have so much stuff that I have written already that it was kind of easy for me to just like, you know, take stuff from that and put songs together. And then, you know, we had Mikey, who sings in Never Ending Game, had a couple good like lyric ideas and stuff. So we, you know, I love what he does as a lyricist and stuff. So, you know, it's bouncing ideas off him, and, you know, he was definitely a big help too in getting the lyric aspect of the record done.
Right. Yeah. So it sounded like you just had like like, are you writing just a ton of lyrics, just like more as like you think of something, you write it down, you're like keep it away in a notebook until like moments like that, or is it like I'm writing for this song? Because I've heard it from different people that some people just like to have this giant catalog of, you know, different bars or just like cool things that they just think of and they'll do that, or they're it's better for them to write with some kind of idea of where it's going.
Right. So like I have like when I sit down and write, I'll have like a certain thing in my mind that I want to write about. There's a lot of times where like I'll be at work or I'll be driving or like at the grocery store or something. And like something will just pop into my head and I'll be like, oh, that's pretty cool. And I'll just write it in my notes, like in the notes app in my phone or whatever. So I have a bunch of like just different shit scattered, you know, whenever an idea pops in my head, I kind of just jot it down.
Yeah. So, it's still bananas to me that you guys wrote pretty much the foundation for that. So the music was written in like 5 hours a day. We'll just round it up to that. So like the lyric side of things, like how much of that is like time restraining for you, figuring out the flow of things, or did that all just come very organically and naturally as well?
Yeah, I mean, you know, as soon as I would hear a song, I'd say, okay, like I would kind of just map the lyrics out in my head, you know, like the patterns and stuff like that. And then it's kind of just putting words to patterns. You know, it's nothing too crazy. You know, like I said, I had a lot of stuff already ready to go. And it was just kind of molding it to the songs so it sounded like it made sense.
Yeah. How much of, because like, yeah, definitely like, hearing a lot of the stuff off the album ties to a lot of the rhythmic side of what Mully's doing. And I think him being in the drum position of the band, but also doing vocals in another band, I'm sure there's a good kind of back and forth there. So
yeah,
like how much of that was like, were you changing things to match like a drum fill, or the other way around where he's maybe slightly changing things to make a certain line just really flow a lot more nice?
It's one of those, like, it would be one of those things where I'd have maybe two ideas for a part. And obviously Tyler being a great frontman, lyricist, stuff like that, it was easy for me to go to him and be like, hey, what would you do here? You know, or how would you position these words, or how would you, you know, deliver this line and stuff like that. So, you know, I didn't want him to change anything that he did with drums. Like it was just, you know, do your thing, and then I'll, you know, alter things the way that I have to. But it was nice having him as a resource, you know, and being able to like bounce ideas off him throughout the recording process to make things make sense that didn't really, you know, make sense to me.
Yeah. Do you find that like sometimes because LP is a large amount of songs already, but then you guys had like the split and the EP kind of prior. Have you been finding that as a lyricist that you have like either go-to words or phrases that you have to check at times to be like, oh, I've already used this multiple times on a song, or it's like embedded in a lot in this record, and I want to make sure that that's not a quote unquote word crutch for me? Like how do you keep constantly growing and evolving with, you know, the amount of words that you're hitting in a dictionary per se?
Yeah, that definitely happens with me. Like even live, like I would like watch the FYA video of our set, and I'd be like, you know, wow, I say let's fucking go a lot when we play. And like, you don't realize you're doing it. Like you're just doing it subconsciously. Yeah. You know, and then that's something that, you know, you just try to address or, you know, correct going forward. But as far as lyrics go, yeah, there's definitely like phrases and stuff like that can become pretty repetitive pretty easily. You know, you become attached to a certain thing, and then you just, you know, without even thinking, you just like use it multiple times. So that's why, like, when I wrote the lyrics for the LP, or like put together the lyrics for the LP, like I made sure every song, you know, did not have too much overlapping to kind of make each one stick out from one another and not just kind of blend together as like a 20 something minute song. You know what I mean?
Yeah. You were speaking of your guys' FYA live video. I think when I was watching the Philly barbecue and then like some of the other videos, one thing that I noticed for you performing live is that you are committed to your craft. And I think a lot of vocalists who might not even have like a lot of like word like soup that they're trying to get through every single word, but they'll like purposely take breaks and like maybe not do a verse or maybe do half of a chorus to catch their breath. So like has that been like something in your mind, like I'm not backing down and I'm like, there's obviously like I have to take a breath, so I'm gonna skip this. Like it seems like there's so much mental like calculations of like I'm skipping this word but then I'm picking it up here, and it's just like has that always just been natural for you, or have you had to build up that muscle?
It's one of those like, so when we did this, like when we started this band, the initial thought to myself was I'm too fat and too out of shape to just be screaming every single song.
Sure.
I was like, so let's make it a little bit easier on myself. So like all the lyrics and stuff, I really don't have to yell too much. So it makes it easier for me to say more and do more.
Sure.
Instead of screaming 10 words, I'm kind of more or less rapping 10 words, which it's a lot easier to talk 10 words than to scream 10.
Mm-hmm.
So that was something I definitely kept in mind. And because even when I would like send the lyrics over to Will, he'd be like, buddy, you're going to have a hard time playing these live, but with the way that I'm doing vocals with these songs, it makes it a lot easier to kind of get everything out.
Got you. Yeah. Because it's definitely that thing where I've heard bands that have really fast sections, but they're like, they can do it in the studio and it in a harsher way, but it's like doing that 30 nights in a row. Like if you're doing a month-long tour, it's like, the first 10 days are like kind of good and then it just falls flat. But like I think if people want to do that style, like having that stamina, like to maintain that stamina, you need to kind of like compromise in some other areas to make sure that you can do it night after night. Yeah. So when it came to we were talking about just like the writing process, like and having those quote unquote like crutch words and being like, okay, like maybe I can reframe this. Like what has been like, because I wrote some of my favorite lyrics down for some of the album, and like what to you makes like a good bar or like a good series of words? Like what are things that you listen or appreciate when you're listening to other artists or lyricists where you're like, I can't believe you combined all these words together? Is it like is it more of like the word, my boss uses the term like a $5 word versus like a 5-cent word. So is it like getting the really obscure word to work in a phrase, or is it like more of being creative in that? I'm just kind of curious on what you value.
I think it's less obscurity and it's something that like just kind of people can remember. It's like I grew up listening to a lot of like watching videos of a lot of like battle raps. Like in Philly, battle rapping was like a huge thing when I was like growing up and like listening to hip hop and stuff like that. And that's all punchlines. So like obviously I can't really, I'm not going to use a ton of different like punchlines per se in Gridiron songs, but it's one of those things. It's like when you form a bar or something like that, at the end of the bar, the person listening to it, like even in a battle rap, they're just kind of like, damn, like, okay, it kind of just sticks with them. And, so that's something that I kept in mind while writing too, was just trying to like format things and formulate things that at the end of the bar, people will remember it because it's, it's kind of a punchline without being like a joke punchline. You know what I mean?
Yeah. A punchline more of like punch being the impact versus like an insult.
Right. Exactly.
Got you. Yeah. Cause one of my, from 25-8, when you said, and I think it's just like, it's very funny because you play on the same word multiple times, but you kind of have like a self-aware ending. You said you can't keep chasing what it is that you're chasing, losing pace in the race that you're racing. This shit basically basic. And I just laughed because I thought, like, I imagine you writing like, yeah, this is basically basic. I really like that, as well as you saying it's arithmetic, bitch, because I don't think anyone has plugged in math terminology into a hardcore song ever.
Yeah, there might be a couple first time things on this record as far as lyrics go, but yeah, that's probably one of them. The using the word arithmetic.
Yeah, but like the enunciation of that, like under the mic, is super juicy. Has there been any like specific lines that either friends or other people have like reached out to of like, this is the hardest shit ever, or just like the most creative shit ever?
I had a friend text me the other day and say he's getting its arithmetic bitch tattooed on his stomach, which was funny. Yeah, I mean, obviously the Boyertown, which is the town that I grew up in, and Lawyertown, rhyming Lawyertown with Boyertown's kind of dumb, but it worked. That was an idea that Mikey from NEG helped me out with a lot. So yeah, there's a couple lines that are just like, you listen to it and you're like, I don't know why this is in here, but it works. That seems to kind of be the vibe as far as the lyrics on some songs.
Yeah, like I love that bands can rock where they're from, and hardcore is such a subgenre that likes to like almost put their scenes and towns and cities on the map. So from it's Boyer is where you're is where you're from.
Yeah.
So just like here, I'm like, me in Canada, I have no there's no need for me to know that, but now I know that through Gridiron, which is such a funny thing.
Yeah, I mean, Boyertown, it's like a super tiny town in the suburbs of Philly. There might be there's probably like 10,000 people that live there right now at this point. I don't live there anymore, but I live right on the outside of it, like in between Philly and Boyertown. But it's just a small town, and it's just like two of the guys from Agitator I went to high school with. So we're like the only three like people who are in bands. Like Andrewson, he plays bass in Payback now, and Marty, who sang in Agitator, sings in Struck Nerve now. But we all went to high school together, so it's just kind of us three from Boyertown, but we just punished people so hard with Boyertown that now it's like a thing. So
yeah, no, it's. Will there be Gridiron Boyertown merch in the future?
Maybe at some point. I'm definitely not leaving that out of the question for sure.
Yeah. I'm sure some kind of Gridiron jerseys will probably come before like the Gridiron like varsity looking like sweatshirt or something. But that's sick. Speaking of merch, you guys did the Ford Rip shorts, which are so sick. I don't know, like so many bands would do a rip like of a sports team. Like my band does a lot of like video game rips, which is a pretty common thing. But I never had thought to do like a car manufacturing company rip. So
I mean,
yeah, I'm just kind of curious off of that, but I do have some follow-ups off of that question.
Yeah, I mean, Will being from Detroit, Ford Field, Detroit Lions, Motor City, makes sense, I guess, for us to do it. But yeah, they're crazy looking shorts, but yeah, they're awesome. They're funny.
Yeah. I'm just kind of curious, like, what do you think is the other top contender for like a car company hardcore rip? It doesn't need to be shorts per se, but like, what do you think has like good branding that could, someone could wear it and it wouldn't be like, why are you wearing a Toyota shirt at a hardcore show?
I mean, you could do something funny like Saturn. I think Saturn? It would be funny if a band ripped off like Saturn for some reason.
Right.
or I don't know. I mean, obviously, if Ford's rival is Chevy, so
I feel like it needs to be something like that, like
yeah,
some kind of company that has a heavy duty kind of truck. I don't know why I'm thinking this, but at the time we're recording this, Karma and Dara on tour, and I saw Aaron was wearing this like really oversized, and maybe it looks oversized because of the wide angle phone filter, but he was wearing a Tesla hat. And now that we're having this conversation, I'm like, is Tesla like a company that bands could do a rip of? But I feel like they're a little too controversial as far as like,
yeah, I feel like they're probably like the most poppin' car right now. You know what I mean? So if there was a time, I guess now would be the time to do a Tesla rip.
Yeah, I guess so. Yeah. And you guys also have actual gridiron footballs as well.
Yeah. We did some footballs. That was one thing that like started out as a joke and then ended up becoming very real. That happens a lot with us. Like we'll like joke about something and be like, well, wait, that might actually be kind of cool. So yeah, we did some footballs.
Yeah. And those haven't been sold at a show yet. It's only been a part of the pre-orders. Okay.
Yeah. It's just a pre-order through Triple B.
Yeah. Because it would just be hilarious for any of the fest that you guys are playing that just like all these little mini footballs are just being thrown across the room.
I'd be lying if I said we didn't have that idea at some point. So
maybe because we're talking football and clearly you're a big fan yourself, would Philadelphia be the one team that you would be down to license some kind of gridiron track as like some kind of promotional thing for the team, or is there someone else that comes to mind?
Oh no, absolutely. Yeah, it would be the Eagles, but Will and I would definitely butt heads with that because he'd be pushing for the Lions and I'd be pushing for the Eagles. But yeah, I mean, if that's something that would happen, that would be awesome.
Mm-hmm. Let's jump back to your lyrics as well. Because I think a lot of things, especially in the vein of music that you guys are playing, there's definitely a lot of like, I'm writing this track, like there's a certain notion to like this track is about this or this person who's had a shitty take. So when you're writing your stuff, like, are you trying to keep like this song is specifically like to get this feeling out, or is there like different things that you like has every song been more of like a person to person basis, or are there certain gridiron songs that you were trying to write that were more broader topics, I should say?
There's songs that are about like specific things, like a specific person or situation or things like that. But then there's also songs about like things that I feel are important. Like the song Brothers in Arms, on the new record, that's just about your boys being there for you. That's like kind of an important thing to me. So, that's what that song was about. So yeah, I think I kind of go on both ends. There's songs that are very specific and, topic centric. And then there's other ones that are just extremely broad.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And it's not to say that, if you're writing a song about brotherhood, you can't have a line that's like a nod to a specific experience in your life with that.
Exactly.
But like, still keeping to that versus like this song is specifically about, my experience with shitty said individual or whatever.
Right.
Mm-hmm. Have you ever gotten to play a certain song that you've written about a person and that person is in the room?
No.
Okay.
No. Unfortunately not. But
there was
one song is about Ben Simmons, who was a basketball player here. So okay. he pissed me off. He pissed me off enough to write a song about him. So I hope he hears it.
Oh wow. I don't think I've ever heard from someone that a hardcore song is written about an athlete. So
yeah, I mean, I'm that pathetic of a sports fan that it made me that mad. So
what did he do that upset you so much?
So basically he like forced his way out of Philadelphia and basically like turned his back on the fans, blamed the fans for his issues. Like he like refused to show up. And then when he showed up, he was more of a problem. And he was supposed to be like one of the cornerstone pieces of the Sixers, like core, nucleus to win a championship. And, he ended up just kind of like saying, fuck you to the fans, the city, his teammates and stuff like that. And now he's in Brooklyn. So he's gone now, thankfully. But yeah, the whole situation here, it's all you would hear about is just people. There's no athlete in Philadelphia that's hated more than Ben Simmons.
Okay. So, if my band is ever playing Philly and I need to say something to rile up the crowd, I'd be like, yo, this song is dedicated to Ben Simmons, fuck you. And then people would be like, oh, okay, they get it.
Oh, yeah. You'll get a standing ovation. You'll probably get carried out of the venue on people's shoulders. So
sell out of all the merch.
Yep.
That's so funny. Yeah, like I only ask, and this has been one of my favorite moments from this fest, but I was filming a fest in Tulsa, and there was a band, I'll keep the names out of it, but there was a band that was playing their very last show, and the singer, like, he said something to the effect of, it's every vocalist's dream to play a song that they wrote about someone and they're in the room, and just proceeded to call that person out. And it was like their last show. So he like could give no fucks. And so it was just like, and I was like, man, like I'm removed from this situation, but like respect for like owning that and saying it with your chest. So,
yeah.
Not to say that you
crazy.
have to do it per se, but I just think it's pretty funny to be able to be like, I think it would just be embarrassing if someone's coming up to grab the mic and you're like, I wrote this about you. And it's like, it's not a nice song.
Yeah. Well, if Ben Simmons is ever at a Gridiron show, I will let him know that the song's about him. So
I hope to see that one day. Well, Matt, we're kind of getting towards the end here. It's been really fun to talk to you, and like big Gridiron fan. I'm stoked to see you guys and play with you guys and film you guys. There's going to be a lot of going on. One of the last questions that I ask everyone here on the podcast is a favorite Mosh related story that they would like to share. So that could be anything that's first to your mind. That could be something that happened to you, something that you did, something that happened at a Gridiron show or any other show in your past. That's how we start to head towards the close.
Well, this one, all right. So at the Unity Barbecue, our first show, when we were playing the one mosh part in Ain't Turn Mine towards the end of the song, Jake, our bassist, took his bass off, set it on the ground, jumped off stage, and started moshing, which was pretty funny.
Yes.
That was definitely pretty cool.
Mm-hmm. It's definitely one of my favorite like live things that I've seen this last year.
Yeah, it was really hard to keep my composure for the rest of the song after seeing that. I had tears in my eyes from laughing so hard.
That well, at the very least, that was during when the vocalist of One on One was coming up and doing his part. Was that right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So at least you were like, I'm trying to say 10 words a second here.
Yeah, I'm like on the side, like just dying.
Right. I had one more question I did want to get to before we start to wrap up. When you guys did your countdown for the record, you used a lot of like different food and beverage for the 4 days left was with French fries and ketchup packets. It makes sense now because like when it was the last day, you had a single can of Diet Coke.
Right.
Was that all you, or was that like was that something that was like, this is what we're doing, or is like, oh, we should do something to help?
I mean, it literally was like, Will was like, as a joke, like, should we start a countdown? And obviously we're like, I don't know. And then Will sent the picture of the French fries. Will was the photographer behind all those artistic masterpieces of food. And he sent the picture of the French fries. And it was just like, okay, this is too funny not to post. And I thought it was funny that we started at 4 days. Like we started counting down at 4 days instead of like 10 or 5. But yeah, so that was it. There wasn't much thought that went into it. I just imagine
him eating, and he's got like the bag fries, like the fries that fell out of the container and they're at the bottom of the bag, dumps them out. I can make a 4 out of this, takes the picture, post that.
I picture him with like an easel and like tweezers, like strategically putting the fries in the right position.
Right. And then I think day 3 days left was a bunch of Reese's peanut butter cups upside down.
Yeah. Yeah. I guess that was like leftover, like, I don't know, Halloween candy he had or something. I feel like he was digging deep in the pantry to find stuff to make numbers with.
Yeah, and then day 2 was like a plethora of different aluminum cans of some beverage, and then last one
it was natural. Yeah, day 2, I think he had people over to watch March Madness, and someone left cans of Natty Light beer in the basement, so we just used that, which is like the cheapest, worst. It's like drinking gasoline.
Yeah.
So yeah, and then one day left was the old DC.
As long as you're ending with the DC, I think that's the move. I hope more bands do funny shit like that, where it's like this actually helps you remind you of like we have a record coming out, but it's done in a very like just like stripped down hardcore way of like here's some French fries to let you know that I have a record coming out.
Right.
Well, Matt, this has been really fun, dude. Really excited to see you play. Anybody that you want to shout out, anything that you want to plug, or anything that you want to send the people off with before we wrap up the show, the floor is yours.
Yeah, I definitely want to shout out everyone that had a part in making the record come together. God's Hate, Mind Force, Pain of Truth, Philly Hardcore, Bob Wilson, Rebirth Records, Streets of Hate, Days, From Within, Triple B. They're all labels right now that are just doing insanely cool shit with hardcore. We have a record release show coming up in 2 Saturdays. Sorry. Yeah. April 9th. And that's in Phoenixville, PA, which is like the suburbs of Philly. And that's with Tsunami, Invoke, Queensway, Division of Mind, Carried by Six. And then the following Friday, we have a record release out in Detroit with Internal Bleeding, which is I'm really psyched for. I love that band. Pain of Truth playing that. So that'll be a lot of fun. C4. Also, Joe Hardcore and everything he does for Philly and stuff like that. It's real important, to keep things fresh and keep things going. And he, is him and Bob are a huge part in, making that happen. And, all the Philly hardcore bands, Carried by Six, Struck Nerve, Statement of Pride, an awesome new band. That Carter Fronts from Florida. They're awesome. I could just keep going on. There's so many good bands. Tsunami, you name it.
Yeah.
But yeah.
I'll definitely, this episode, I'll make sure that's dropping super close to your guys' record release show. So it's super, super timely. Definitely go check that out if you're in the area. Really excited for Gridiron to be making their Canadian debut in Toronto.
Yeah.
September.
I don't even have a passport yet, bro. I gotta get
something
on that.
Something you gotta get. Yeah.
I thought I'd never leave Boyertown. But...
From Boyertown to Toronto. Well, dude, I'm very excited to link up. It should be a good time, and I'll make sure that I'll bring some Diet Coke for you.
Yeah, man. Thanks so much. I can't wait. Thanks for having me on. Appreciate it.